appreciate everyone for tuning in today. This will be the last chapter concerning Prithu Maharaj. So today we will be looking at chapter 23 of 4th Canto, entitled Maharaj Prithu Goes Back to Godhead. That's the chapter. Very beautiful chapter. So if you are in a position to read, then raise your hands, then I will pick a few. Good to see Padma Mataji. Very welcome back. Long time I was thinking about you. I hope you are well. Okay, so no worries. Padma Mataji, whenever you are ready, you can speak. Okay, so let me share the screen. Today I try and complete the class within an hour. So 8 o'clock, we will try and conclude. In the last class, we got a bit delayed. Let's see, chapter Satish Prabhu. So if you can kindly read.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Yeah. The first 8 verses.
First 8 verses. Sure, Prabhu. Maharaja Prithu going back home. Text 1 to 3. At the last stage of his life, when Maharaja Prithu saw himself getting old, that great soul who was the king of the world divided whatever opulences he had accumulated amongst all kinds of living entities, moving and non-moving. He arranged pensions for everyone according to religious principles, and after executing the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in complete coordination with him, he decided his sons onto the earth. So he dedicated his sons onto the earth, which was considered to be his daughter. Then Maharaj Prithu left the presence of his citizens, who were almost lamenting and crying from feeling separation from the king, and went to the forest alone with his wife to perform austerities.
So, yeah, okay, carry on.
Text 4. After retiring from family life, Maharaja Prithu strictly followed the regulations of retired life and underwent severe austerities in the forest. He engaged in these activities as seriously as he had formerly engaged in leading the government and conquering everyone. Text 5. In the Tapovana, Maharaja Prithu sometimes ate the trunks and roots of trees, sometimes he ate fruit and dried leaves, and for some weeks he drank only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air. Text 6. Following the principles of forest living and the footsteps of the great sages and munis, Prithu Maharaj accepted 5 kinds of heating processes during the summer season, exposed himself to torrents of rain in the rainy season, and in winter stood in water up to his neck. He also used to simply lie down on the floor to sleep. Text 7. Maharaja Prithu underwent all these severe austerities in order to control his words and his senses, to refrain from discharging his semen, and to control the life air within his body. All this he did for the satisfaction of Krishna. He had no other purpose. Text 8. By thus practicing severe austerities, Maharaja Prithu gradually became steadfast in spiritual life and completely free of all desires for fruitive activities. He also practiced breathing exercises to control his mind and senses, and by such control, he became completely free from all desires for fruitive activity. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. This is a very important chapter. I request everyone to pay a little bit of attention. We can take some wonderful lessons. And there is Palashruti at the end as well. Palashruti means the benefits of hearing or reading the activities of Prithu Maharaj is given at a length towards the end of this chapter. Very beautiful chapter. So many simple chapter, but wonderful lessons can be learned. Okay, so in the previous chapter, we had seen how Prithu Maharaj had the audience of 4 Kumaras. He received them well, and he washed their feet, and collected that water, sprinkled on on his head and the family members as well, heads of family members, and then he inquired from them about how the citizen can attain all perfection. What is the means that the citizens, that the human beings can attain all perfection, or ultimate benefit, achieve the ultimate benefit. So he was a very good king, very administrator, ideal king, ideal administrator. So his behavior was very exemplary, and he always wanted to take care of the citizens. So as a result of that, he asked this particular question rather than asking, give me this, give me that, or give me that. How can I achieve some material benefit? He was not asking these kind of questions. Rather, he asked, how the citizens can attain the ultimate perfection or ultimate goal of life. And then the Sanat Kumara, the head of 4 Kumaras, he gave several instructions, but the sum and substance of all those instructions was devotion to Krishna. When one when one engages in devotional service, he develops attachment to Krishna and detachment for the material things. This is the simple recipe he had given: attachment to Krishna, detachment to the material things. And he had given several instructions, but this is the sum and substance of the instruction: performing devotion, basically, while engaging in their daily activities, or while engaging in their profession, according to their nature. They engage in their profession or duties. At the same time, worship, render devotional service unto the Supreme Lord Krishna. After that, Prithu Maharaj had thanked them and said that we will not be able to repay your debt for your kind association, for kindly giving your association, and also for kindly giving this wonderful message. How can we repay? We will never be able to repay. Similarly, we are always indebted to our all acharyas. Because of those saintly persons, we are able to get this nectar, read Srimad Bhagavatam, and practice little devotion, whatever little we are doing, whatever little is doing because of the saintly people like Prabhupada and other acharyas. So because of them, we are here today. And we owe a debt. We will never be able to repay. But how can we do the service to them? Just simply following their instructions. That way they will be very pleased. And after that, the Kumaras had left from that place, and king had executed his duties. And he was a very very nice king, and his character qualities were compared to various demigods. How he ruled, he was always patient like Mother Earth. Like various qualities were mentioned, wonderful qualities. So that's how he ruled the kingdom. He respected the Brahmanas. He took the advice of the Brahmanas, means saintly people, and worshipped the Supreme Lord. performed his duty as a king. Administration. So in this chapter, we have this chapter is entitled Prithvi Maharaj is going back to uh, back home. So here it is said, in the olden days, the system is that although they were very comfortable in the palace, these kings were very saintly. And the term that is used is Rajarshi. Rajarshi. They're Raja at the same time Rishi, means saintly or saintly kings. So they, at certain point, they would give up the kingdom and go to the forest. That was always there when it comes to saintly kings. So he at certain point, he was not ruling until the fag end of his life. This is the point for us. Okay, there is a point that we have to say goodbye to our material duties, and see and then engage ourselves more and more in devotional service. Yes, we have to work, but we have to decide what age. Yes, we engage in devotional service daily like this now. Like most of you, I know that we are working from home today. Some of you must have been out and worked elsewhere or worked from home, and then we are try and read a little bit from Srimad Bhagavatam, read and hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is good. We do on a daily basis, little by little. But at certain point, we should do this more, 10 hours a day. I don't know, more hours a day. So that should be our goal. So he decided to distribute the king the wealth, and he made his sons, the kings of various parts of the country, and then Maharaj Prithu decided to leave the kingdom, go to forest. When Maharaj Prithu left the kingdom, the Syrians lamented and cried, from the feeling of separation, because he was so nice king. So the Syrians literally cried because they were separated from the king. And Maharaj Prithu also, when he left, his good wife Archie also went. So there are a number of wonderful points from the purport of this particular these three verses 1, 2, 3. So firstly, we have to understand Maharaj Prithu, although is an empowered incarnation of Lord, he came as a human being to this material world to set a ideal behavior, ideal behavior for the human mankind. That was his purpose. Ideal king, ideal ruler. So for him, actually, there was no need to give up the kingdom and go to forest to execute further, devotional acts. There was no need at all. Prabhupada writes in the purports of this entire 23rd chapter, it was an exemplary behavior. He was his administration was exemplary. His administration was exemplary. Now he wants to be an ideal. He want to show an ideal example of the retirement also. He showed as a king ideal behavior, but now he wants to show, how a common person should retire. So you want to set a good example. And another point Prabhupada writes is that, when he went, Mother Archie followed. Usually the wife doesn't follow. They stay back. If you see, I remember Dhruv Maharaj's story, only Dhruv Maharaj had left. Bharat Maharaj's story that will come in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, only he had left. Like that, when Uttanapada, father of Dhruv Maharaj, when he had left the kingdom, when he renounced, his wife stayed back. But however, here Mother Archie also followed Prithu Maharaj. So Prabhupada makes a wonderful point here, a very wonderful point. One should not simply remain at home until the time of death, but should separate from family life at a timely moment and prepare themselves to go back to Godhead. So it may not be possible for us these days to leave home, but at least we should separate, we should try and retire from our material duties, like whatever we were doing, we should separate. That's the point. At certain point, in these days, you can't go to forest. If possible, you can go to Holy Dham if you have a facility there. That's okay. Otherwise, retire, and then live at home, and then detach from all other material things, but increase devotion, increase the 9 process of devotional service, perform more and more, beginning from hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Marchanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, beginning from hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping the Lord, like that. So more and more engagement. I mentioned this before also. If you remember, one of my god brothers, he retired now, but his principle was that this amount, this much wealth, or this age, whichever comes first, I would retire. And luckily, Krishna gave him the wealth first, so he retired sooner rather than later. And now he fully engages in Krishna consciousness. He was a financial guy, and he basically gives the financial education to the devotees, because that is also an important part of a householder, because once you are financially stable, then you can focus more on more on Krishna. So we talked quite a bit on that. I think I covered so many points, but for us, the main point is that wife and husband engage, but yes, Prabhu, you're telling, but my partner is not supportive. What can you do? You engage yourself. In those days, it was possible for wife and husband together. Ideally, wife and husband together. But if not, no problem. Carry on. Just do your bit. If your partner is supportive, that's good. If not supportive, just do whatever little you can. So, and then he didn't go for a, go to the forest simply for enjoying their, just spending time in the forest, having, nice, looking at the nice scenery and like that. No. So there were actually, in those days, they are called tapovana. There are some forests only meant for forming, these austerities, where other sages and other people would come and retire there. So he, Prithu Maharaj, underwent severe austerities in the forest. Um, Severe austerities, and he was eating very little, like trunks and roots of trees, fruits, leaves, and sometimes drinking only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air. For us, take prasadam. When we come to old age anyway, we are forced. I think, our dietary requirements anyway would change quite a bit. But eat prasadam, a simple prasadam, stay at home and engage more in devotion. And some of the austerities were mentioned here, like in summer season, you would, you would put some fire around him. And then in the winter season, exposed himself to the rains. And in the winter, he stood up in the water up to his neck. So, and he just lied down on the floor only. So, we can sleep on the bed, no issues, and execute our devotion. So why did he do all this? If you see the text 7, he did all this for the satisfaction of Krishna, had no other purpose. People go and perform severe austerities to gain some material benefits, mystic powers, etc., etc. But here, Prithu Maharaj had done all this simply for the satisfaction of Krishna. So, in Kali Yuga, we can't do all this severe austerity. Because when Prithu Maharaj was done, that was a different age in Satya Yuga. Not to this Satya Yuga, long time ago. But what is the recommended process? Prabhupada writes that Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Maiva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatiranyadaha. So, in this age, only the name of Lord Hari, only the name of Lord Hari, only the name of Lord Hari. Nothing else, nothing else, nothing else. So Prabhupada says that simply stay in your occupational position, and at certain age, detach and simply chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And that would be sufficient. So, and this is the recommended process. We need not to go to forest and submerge ourselves in the cold water in the winter and exposed to the rain in the rainy season, etc., etc. There is no requirement of all this, but simply chanting Hare Krishna mantra. Our tapasya, our austerity is to follow 4 regulatory principles, namely no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna mantra on beads as advised by Srila Prabhupada. Why 16? Prabhupada said you can chant more. Sometimes people ask, why 16? People ask. Prabhupada said you can chant more, no problem, but minimum is 16. Because acharyas, they give us some guidelines. depending on the degree of our material disease, the dose is given accordingly. So acharyas, the saintly people, know what dose should be given. And moreover, whatever saintly person says, it will be honored by Krishna. This is the point you remember. This is a very important, because Prabhupada said it, Krishna will honor it. That's it. That's our austerity. It is simple. Simple for the simple, complicated for the complicated. We can do it. Okay. So can we, Anupama Radhika Mataji, can we read the next section or the same section from text 9 till 18, please?
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Text 9. Thus, the best amongst human beings, Maharaja Prithu followed that path of spiritual advancement, which was advised by Sanat Kumara. That is to say, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Maharaja Prithu thus engaged completely in devotional service, executing the rules and regulations strictly according to principles, 24 hours daily. Thus his love and devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, developed and became unflinching and fixed. By regularly discharging devotional service, Prithu Maharaj became transcendental in mind and could therefore constantly think of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because of this, he became completely detached and attained perfect knowledge by which he could transcend all doubt. Thus, he was freed from the clutches of false ego and the material conception of life. When he became completely free from the conception of bodily life, Maharaja Prithu realized Lord Krishna sitting in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. Being thus able to get all instructions from him, he gave up all other practices of yoga and jnana. He was not even interested in the perfection of the yoga and jnana systems, for he thoroughly realized that devotional service to Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and that unless the yogis and jnanis became attracted to Krishna Katha, which is narrations about Krishna, their illusions concerning existence can never be dispelled. In due course of time, when Prithu Maharaj was to give up his body, he fixed his mind firmly upon the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus completely situated on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he gave up the material body. When Maharaja Prithu practiced a particular yogic sitting posture, he blocked the door of his anus with his ankles, pressed his right and left calves, and gradually raised his life air upward, passing it onto the circle of his navel, up to his heart and throat, and finally pushed it upward to the central position between his two eyebrows. In this way, Prithu Maharaj gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. In this way, according to the different positions of the various parts of his body, Prithu Maharaj merged the wholes of his senses with the sky, his bodily liquids such as blood and various secretions within the totality of water, and he merged earth with water, then water with fire, fire with air, air with sky, and so on. He amalgamated the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects, according to their respective positions. He also amalgamated the material ego with the total material energy, Mahatattva. Prithu Maharaj then offered the total designation of the living entity unto the supreme controller of illusory energy. Being released from all the designations by which the living entity became entrapped, he became free by knowledge and renunciation and by the spiritual force of his devotional service. In this way, being situated in his original constitutional position of Krishna consciousness, he gave up this body as a Prabhu or controller of the senses. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So here, Prithu Maharaj had practiced, a section of Ashtanga Yoga because it was not required. Prabhupada writes many times in these purports. It was not required for him to attain some kind of perfection. He was a empowered incarnation of the Lord. However, is setting an example for the mankind. So that's the point Prabhupada writes time and again. So whatever we do will be tested at the time of death. People say that life is a preparation and death is an examination. Whatever we remember at the time of death, we will attain that state. In the 8th chapter of Gita, Krishna says, Yam yam vapismaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram tam tamai vaiti yat sadatad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one thinks at the time of quitting one's body, one will achieve that state. In this, there is no doubt. So here, Prithu Maharaj attained a wonderful state. He could control. He became a master, Prabhu. So now, currently, we are controlled by our senses, 6 senses, which includes the mind. We are controlled by these senses. But however, he became master of the senses, and he could see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything, everywhere. That was his status. So also, there is another point about his life air pushing upwards. This is called Muktasan. So, the life air is situated somewhere at the bottom, and then you slowly bring it upwards. There are various chakras, part of the Ashtanga Yoga yoga system, and the yogis, mystic yogis, slowly they raise their life air. They close the holes. We have 9 holes in the body, and there is a 10th hole in the skull, which is called Brahmarandra. So ideally, the yogis they raise their life air, to the navel, from the navel to the heart, to the throat, then to the eyebrows, and then once it comes to the eyebrows, then slowly they will release their life air through the hole in the skull, a small hole somewhere, and that is Brahmarandra. So he was like, he was in that situation. He could bring up that life air like that. And after this state, where he could see Krishna everywhere, and he decided to give up his body. He gave up his body as Prabhu, or controller of the senses. So that is the perfect stage of leaving one's body. But for us, we simply do our devotion. Krishna says in the 8th chapter, Naite Parthashvatiyo, Naite, what is that? 28. Yeah. Naite Shruti Partha Janan, Yogi Muyyati Kashana, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu, Yoga Yukto Bhavarjuna. A devotee will never bewilder, whether to give up body at this time, day or night, inside or outside. But what a devotee does is simply engages in devotional service. That's it, and Krishna will take care of the rest. That's what's advised. For us now, as long as we are in this body and we are able to do devotion, let us do it nicely. When we are not in a position to do it, Krishna will take care of it. But when we are in a position to do it, when our body and senses are in a reasonable condition, let us engage them in the devotional service of the Lord. And then when we are in a position sometimes not able to do it because of our ill health or something else, so Krishna will take care of it. So there's a question, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I'm not able to speak today. Were devotees able to attain Goloka by performing austerities in those days, or is it Vaikunta they achieved? Yeah. So here Prithu Maharaj, so it's the spiritual world, and Goloka and Vaikunta, they're all part of the spiritual world. But Prabhupada mentions that Prithu Maharaj had gone back to Vaikunta. So Vaikunta is all the spiritual world. It could include Goloka as well. But here Prithu Maharaj is not a mystic yogi. He's a bhakti yogi. Please remember that point. We had seen in the past also. But however, Sanat Kumaras, for such a yuga, it was such a yuga, they kind of instructed him to do this process. So he was engaging in that way. For us, simply chanting Hare Krishna and following 4 regulative principles should work. Okay, so next section, who would like to read? Please raise your hand, or okay, if not, then okay. Atul Prabhu, Jai Ho Maharaj. Thank you, Prabhu. So from 19 to 22nd.
Okay, the queen, the wife of Prithu Maharaj, whose name was Archi, followed her husband into the forest. Since she was a queen, her body was very delicate. Although she did not deserve to live in the forest, she voluntarily touched her lotus feet to the ground. Although she was not accustomed to such difficulties, Queen Archi followed her husband in the regulative principles of living in the forest like great sages. She lay down on the ground and ate only fruits, flowers, and leaves. And because she was not fit for these activities, she became frail and thin. Yet because of the pleasure she derived in serving her husband, she did not feel any difficulty. When Queen Archi saw that her husband, who had been so merciful to her and the earth, no longer showed symptoms of life, she lamented for a little while and then built a fiery fire on top of a hill and placed the body of her husband on it. After this, the queen executed the necessary funerary functions and offered oblations of water. After bathing in the river, she offered obeisances to various demigods situated in the sky in the different planetary systems. She then circumambulated the fire and, while thinking of the lotus feet of her husband, entered its flame.
Thank you.
After,
yeah, that is a small section. So we'll give you another chance for the next section. So Mother Archi was also there with Maharaj Prithu. She was just serving him. She was not doing this particular type of exercises or other yogic process. Her duty was just serving her husband. Although she was very delicate, she decided to follow her husband. Please note here that because her husband was a wonderful devotee. If your partner is a wonderful devotee, by serving the partner, you achieve perfection. So if wife is a good devotee, the husband should serve the wife also. Don't think that it's always only the, so that's why I use partner. So in our congregation, I see many Matajis are many Matajis are devotees, but husbands never come to temple. But husband can achieve perfection simply by serving their wives. You can go and tell your partners today. This is what we learned from Srimad Bhagavatam. But in those days, yes, so Prithu Maharaj was a wonderful, exalted personality, and he was such a great soul. And she just decided to serve. Prabhupada writes several examples like Mother Sita voluntarily, went to the forest. It was not an obligation for her to go, but she decided to go to the forest along with Ramchandra. And Gandhari's example also Prabhupada gives. Gandhari decided to, because her husband was blind, she decided to, blindfold. But, the point here, Prabhupada makes a wonderful point. If I can read that point, I'll read it out. So this is actually 22nd, yeah. But okay, we will read that a little later, no problem. But the point is that whoever is devotee, if a wife is a devotee, husband can serve. That is no doubt about it. Yeah. So here she, after Prithu Maharaj left his body, then Mother Archie lamented a little while. That feeling is there, but she's aware. She's aware. So one day, in one sangha, people were asking that, how can you lament knowing everything? But there is a degree, a little bit will be there, but she knows everything. She knows. And then she performed the final rites. So she gathered the firewood and on top of hill, and placed her husband's body, and then took a necessary bath and offered oblations, offered prayers to the demigods. Then she decided, and she circumambulated the funeral fire of her husband, and then she entered the fire. This is an interesting point. That was there in those days. Even at the time of Maharaj Pandu, if you remember the story of Maharaj Pandu, when Pandu left his body, Madri, he had two wives, Madri and Kunti. Madri decided to enter the funeral pile, but they were so brave, and they voluntarily entered. That was a system, because the husband was so good. They knew that just by doing this process they will attain the ultimate goal. That was the system. But this system doesn't work now. So, and Prabhupada writes in the purport, actually in his childhood he had seen actually one of these cases when he was little after the 1940. Prabhupada writes in the purport. Yeah, so this is how she conducted herself. But let's read the next section, which is more interesting, from 23rd to 30, text 30. Who would like to read? If no one is there, then I have to pick again, maybe Atul Prabhu. Atul Prabhu, go ahead and do it.
Okay, Prabhu.
Let me just go back and yeah. Okay, let me bring up Prabhu. I've got so many tabs open. Yeah, I brought it now.
From 23rd, okay. After observing this brave act performed by the chaste wife Archi, the wife of the great king Prithu, many thousands of the wives of the demigods, along with their husbands, offered prayers to the queen, for they were very much satisfied. At that time, the demigods were situated on the top of Mandara hill, and all their wives began to shower flowers on the funeral pyre and began to talk among themselves as follows. The wives of the demigod said, "All glories to Queen Archi." We can see that this queen of the great king Prithu, the emperor of all the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the supreme personality of Godhead, Yagnesh or Vishnu. The wives of the demigods continued, "Just see how this chaste lady, Archi, by dint of her inconceivable pious activities, is still following her husband upward as far as we can see. In this material world, every human being has a short span of life, but those who are engaged in devotional service go back home, back to Godhead, for they are actually on the path of liberation. For such persons, there is nothing which is not available. Any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining a human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult task of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. The great sage Maitreya continued speaking. My dear Vidura, when the wives of the denizens of heaven were thus talking among themselves, Queen Archi reached the planet which her husband Maharaj Prithu, the topmost self-realized soul, had attained. Maitreya continued, the greatest of all devotees, Maharaj Prithu was very powerful, and his character was liberal, magnificent, and magnanimous. Thus I have described him to you as far as possible.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hari.
Thank you. So, please remember that in those days, the earth, which we are not able to have access to the other portions of the earth. But in those days, Maharaj Prithu was ruling the entire earth, not just our part of earth, but it is much bigger. I mentioned many times it comes in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Maharaj Prithu and Archi, they were earthly beings, like if you look at like that. They were on the earth. And these demigods, they are the beings of a higher planetary system. And when they observed this glorious act performed by Mother Archi, they praised Mother Archi. And they offered prayers to the queen. They were very, very satisfied. Actually, they began to shower flowers on the funeral pyre and began to talk among themselves as follows. So they could they saw the both Prithu Maharaj, Prabhupada writes in the purport, they were going upwards, means they were on the higher planetary system, but they could see, but both Mother Archi and Prithu Maharaj were going upwards. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, both Prithu Maharaj's airplane and airplane carrying Queen Archi were passing out of the vision of the ladies of the higher planetary system. These ladies were simply astonished to see how Prithu Maharaj and his wife achieved such an exalted position. Although they were the wives of the denizens of higher planetary system, Prithu Maharaj was an inhabitant of Earth, and he could achieve this wonderful destination. So they were amazed. Prabhupada writes in the purport that there were 2 airplanes came to take them away, to carry them to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. And they could see, these demigods, wives of demigods could see. So they were very much amazed. And then they were expressing and that the value of human life. They are talking in themselves. What are they saying? Nothing is unattainable. Earthly humans have only short life. We only live short time, isn't it? They live thousands and thousands of years, but we only have, if we are lucky, we can live up to 100. Not sure. We have very short lifespan, but these guys, these humans, although they are short-lived, but they can achieve the spiritual world simply by engaging the devotional service of the Lord. What a wonderful, glorious opportunity. So the demigods usually, they live in the higher planetary system. Once their piety is finished, they have to come back. And then from here, again, they perform some, rituals or some pious activities for attaining the higher planetary system. Prabhupada writes, Tetam bhuktva svargalokam vishalam kshine punyam martyalokam vishanti. Evam traidhanam anupapanna gatagatam kama kama labhanti. Simply, they will rotate from earth to heaven, heaven to earth to heaven. This cycle goes forever, just for performing some pious ritualistic activities. But so they were praising the value of human form of life. Although it is they are very short-lived, they have this wonderful opportunity to go back to Godhead just by simply engaging in the devotional service of the Lord. And then there is this famous verse 28, where they say, any person who engages himself within this material world in performing activities that necessitate great struggle, and who, after obtaining the human form of life, which is a chance to attain liberation from miseries, undertakes the difficult task of fruitive activities, must be considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. What does that say? That human form of life is very important. Having obtained, if we misuse it, then we are cheating ourselves. Because anyway, we think we are people generally think YOLO. You only live once. So just enjoy. Just do whatever you want to do. Just finish it off. But it's not like that. So Bhagavad Gita says that we are different from the body. And we will have to take another birth. We will have to enter another's womb and take another body. So here, the wives of demigods, they say that if having obtained the human form of life and still engaging in the material activities without worshipping the Supreme Lord is considered to be cheated and envious of his own self. So human form is very rare. And actually elsewhere, Lord Shiva says that, oh Lord, you gave them this human form of life. Having obtained the human form of life, if they do not worship, they're wasting their time. So elsewhere it is also mentioned, when one wants to cross a large ocean, it requires a strong boat. It is said that this human form of life is a good boat. Okay, this material world is compared to the ocean, and human form of life is compared to a boat, with which we can cross the oceans. Yeah. And the navigator, the captain of this boat is spiritual master. Okay, so one must have a spiritual master. And so favorable, one also gets a favorable wind by the mercy of Krishna. So these spiritual literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc., Bhagavad Gita, they act as like favorable winds. The human material world is compared to ocean, and our human form of life is compared to a boat. And the captain of the ship is spiritual master, and the Vedic literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is compared to the favorable wind, which will push us, and we can move swiftly in the ocean and reach the shore of that ocean. That is the spiritual world. So, and Prabhupada writes actually, it says, if however one does not take advantage of this opportunity, one wastes the human form of life. Wasting time and life in this way is same as committing suicide. It's a little heavy sentence. Yeah. This human form of life is, although it is temporary, we can take full advantage. A lot of benefit can be derived. So these things were mentioned. That's 28. Text 28 is a wonderful verse. And of course, Mother Archie, and along with his with her good husband, reached the Vaikuntha. So, and then from text 31, it's just Palashruti. I will read it. It's nearly 8 o'clock. I'll just read it out. Palashruti means what is the benefit of reading all this? So the story of Prithu Maharaj is wonderful, is powerful, and has great character. Thus, I've narrated this story. Maitra is telling. If he fully, faithfully reads this pastime, attains the abode of Prithu, Vaikuntha. Prithu Maharaj is there. If he hears the characteristics of Prithu Maharaj, so we will go to Vaikuntha. A Brahmana becomes the most learned. A Kshatriya becomes leader of this world. A Vaishya becomes the master of other Vaishyas and cows. A Shudra becomes best devotee. A childless person becomes blessed with good children. A poor man becomes the richest. A person with no reputation becomes famous. A fool becomes learned. One gains all auspiciousness and no inauspiciousness. Achieves wealth, fame, long life, immunity from Kali Yuga. And a king remains victory, ruling power, and tribute from other subordinates. A pure devotee, while discharging devotional service, must hear, read, and induce others to hear about the character and life of Prithu Maharaj. So the conclusion: hearing and chanting about Prithu Maharaj enriches one's devotional attitude. This is what we want. Yes. Hearing and chanting about Prithu Maharaj enriches one's devotional attitude, faith, and attention to the Lord's lotus feet, which are the boat for crossing the ocean of this nescience. Thus, one can go back to home, back to Godhead, like Prithu Maharaj. So whoever with great reverence and adoration regularly reads, chants, and describes the history of Maharaj Prithu's activities will certainly increase unflinching faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's lotus feet are the boat by which we can cross the ocean. Prithu Maharaj ki jai. Brandara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we should try and hear and read on a regular basis. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. If you have any questions or comments, then we can do so just for the next 1 minute or so. And then otherwise we can conclude the session here.
Prabhuji, I have a question. This is Kiran Kohli.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I wanted to ask that sometimes I chant on the digital chanter and not on the beads. Is there any harm in doing that?
Okay, so in the beginning, we can do that, but ideally chanting on the beads is required by our acharyas. So in a particular situation, like, if you're not in a position to chant on beads, then you can use other methods. But ideal scenario is chanting on beads. That is what's recommended by our acharyas.
So
Please don't stop. Continue,
No.
but continue. The aim, the goal is to chant only on beads. And other times you can chant whatever, like say, for example, the goal is to chant 16 rounds on beads, and excess can be chanted in different ways. Say if you are chanting 8 rounds on the counter and 8 rounds on the beads, carry on, but aim to chant slowly 16 rounds on the beads.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.